Thank you so much for that warm welcome. I really appreciate it. And wow, what an honor to see all of you folks here. I'm amazed and I'm honored. And I know probably 80% of you or so, friends, family, community members. So thank you so much for being here. I do want to talk a little about adversity and adventure on Mount Everest. And hopefully by the end of the talk, you'll understand both of those. And I'll get right into it. We got a lot to cover because it was a major adventure and there's a lot going on. So I want to get through it all. Mount Everest, many of you know Mount Everest. It's a household name, as Bago told me today. It's a household name, of course. We all know Mount Everest, also called Chomolungma in Tibetan and Sagarmatha in Nepali. And both of those words in general mean goddess or goddess mother or holy mother. It was the mother of all mountains. It was the start of all mountains, the tallest of all mountains. And so let's get going on how, oh boy, okay. So I want to start by talking about the first part of the trip, which is a trek, the Everest Base Camp trek. And the trek itself is an amazing adventure. 30,000 people do it a year. It's this pilgrimage to the Everest Base Camp. So this was our group. We had Christian and Chloe. We had Kieran and Yandi and Sherpa Pasong and Raymond and John. And there's Liz, one of the Sherpas over here, Dindy, and Matthew and myself. And as you know, Matthew's also from Moab. He couldn't make it tonight, but I met him on a training climb, and it just so happened that we were going to the same mountain, the same trip, the same company, which is crazy to think of, this little town of Moab. And we're going on the same trip, the same time, and there's 50 companies that do this. And what's the chance of that? But he couldn't make it tonight, but he sends his best. So the first thing I want to talk about is we get to Kathmandu, and if you've not been to Kathmandu, it's crazy. We call it Crazy Kathmandu, right? And I'll show you a video here just to give a sense of what it's like. And we might need volume, Jesse. Well, there's Kathmandu. That will get our volume working here. It's crazy in Kathmandu. Yeah, I'll move that. Thank you. So Kathmandu is a city of 800,000 people. It's just I'm not used to that, right? And it's a developing nation, and it's pretty interesting there. Let's see if we get our volume. Can you guys hear any of that?
This is crazy. It's really loud.
All right, there we go. I think we got it. Thank you. Okay. So Kathmandu, we spent several days in Kathmandu. It's just a crazy place, very busy. We're not used to this in the States. They love their mopeds, and we just got ready to go there, got a few things together, and then we started the trek. But we flew into Lukla, and now we're in the backcountry, in the rural part of Nepal, and it's very different and a little more zen. And so this is what we get into. Right down the middle of the street. And it's just a very beautiful place when you get into the rural place, maybe away from Kathmandu. It's just a beautiful place. We're now in the land of the Sherpa, and this is their country, their territory up in the high country. Prayer flags are everywhere, and I brought some to show what that's like. I always thought that the prayer flags were kind of an Americanism where we just caught on to that, and they kind of stole that culture, but it's true. There are prayer flags everywhere. Beautiful country. We kept going up, and these are some other things that we ran into.
This is actually the entrance to the national park. Lots of donkeys coming up with propane tanks. So many donkeys. Oh, they're getting really close. Oh my goodness. Getting bumped with propane tanks.
And all of this is to support. It's to support the climbing and the base camp and the tea houses. And that was Liz, my wife, doing all the filming. So you'll hear her on a lot of these videos. So thanks for all the videos. But so we continued, but like she said, it was the beginning of the national park. Mount Everest is in a national park. And I love this. They don't have a visitor center. They don't have interpretation. They don't do that stuff, but they have this. And what a beautiful thing to have for your national park. Refrain from taking life, refrain from anger, refrain from jealousy, refrain from offending others, and refrain from taking excessive intoxicants. Now, wouldn't that be nice if we had that in the States, or at least Arches National Park, right? Okay. It would make Brian's job a little easier. Just, you don't need a whole book of 36 CFR. You just need that right there. Man, what a Zen culture it is. And then on the way, you cross mini suspension bridges. That's half the fun.
Here comes our guide to talk. Kieran.
We crossed like, what, 10 of those things or something like that. It's just amazing, just the trek itself. We're not even talking about the climbing yet. We finally get up to Namche, Namche Bazaar, and it's the capital of the Sherpa culture. It's a really, really neat place, and it's where everyone comes for shopping and for any type of cultural needs that the Sherpa people have.
And lots of shops here. Oh my gosh. I guess that's why it's a bazaar.
Namche is at about 12,000 feet or so. So we're now starting to get higher and higher. We're just acclimating as we go. The full trek to base camp takes 10 days just to get to base camp. And here's another one that one of Bliz's favorites.
Just love these prayer wheels. Run by the water that never stop churning.
The prayer wheels, the stupas, these are called, with the Buddha eyes. It's just such a Zen place to be. As an aspiring Buddhist myself, it's just neat to be in that culture. And so we continue and we travel through these tea houses. You don't camp, you stay in these lodges and these tea houses. And sometimes the food is bad, sometimes it's good, the rooms are really small, but it provides everything you really need. They have these tea houses all the way up to 16,000 feet. Regardless of the food, you could always get a great cup of hot chocolate, like this gourmet hot chocolate. I don't know why. We just really enjoyed that, and that was like our sustenance, is this hot chocolate. So along the way, we did see some animals, some wildlife. Really not a lot, actually, but this bird is a native bird called an oma, I think, is what the Sherpas told me. These giant, like Nepali golden eagles, and then the ravens and the crows. But really, the wildlife you see everywhere are dogs. Dogs are everywhere. They're very friendly. They're wild. They're feral, pretty much. And these dogs just lay in the middle of the street. They're at the monasteries. They're at the tea houses. These dogs are everywhere. And so it was great for me because I missed my dog, Kona, who I had to leave behind for this trip. So these dogs are just everywhere. And then, of course, you also have the yaks. So we love the yaks. The yaks are great. There's yaks that are adapted to high altitude. They have really thick hair. They're really strong. They can carry a ton of equipment up to base camp. And then there's the jokyu. And these are, the smaller ones are actually a crossbreed between a cow and a yak. So those are jokyus. But, oh, man, we love these things. And I'll show you a video of
I could tell. They definitely move over for these guys.
once you hear that sound, you'll never get it out of your brain. Right, the sound of the yaks, right? And we bought some of these bells, and they're on the back of our chicken coop. And every time Liz opens it, it like takes me back to Nepal. And I have some here. I have some, and I'm going to pass them out, and we're going to listen to what it's like in real life. Okay. Okay, need some help here. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, my teeth, right. Right. All right. Oh, no. You need to think like a yak. Nice and slow. Go ahead. All day long. That's what you hear. Oh, so zen. All right, you can put those down. It's probably good I didn't give them to the kids. All right. All right. So we keep climbing higher. And finally, after this 10 days of acclimating, we get to base camp. And base camp is huge. It's spread out for a mile or so. And this is a shot from way up high. And base camp is down here. So this whole thing, there's hundreds of people here. 500 people, probably close to 800 or maybe 1,000 people are in base camp. All right, and so eventually you'll see we will go up this all the way up here and all the way up here. But this is base camp, 10 days to get there. And it's already set up by the time you get there. The Sherpas do all of this. It's relatively comfortable. There's a kitchen tent, which is this one, and then we have our dining room tent. And then the bathroom and shower. And the Sherpas stay here. And you are not allowed to go in there. That's their space. That is their space. And this is where we hung out. These are our individual tents. We each got one. The climbers, there was 4 climbers. The rest were the Sherpas. So you have your own little space to unpack and to relax. And that was our home for 5 more weeks. All right. So, but you don't do anything until you do the puja. So the puja is very important. It's very important to the Sherpa people. It's very important to the guides. We got into base camp, and within an hour, we're doing the puja. And it's a blessing, and it's asking the goddess and the mother of the mountain to allow you to go onto the mountain. And it's a fascinating ceremony. It takes about 2 hours. The Lama hikes up for days from the lower lands to do this. And this is a Buddhist Lama. And I have a video to show what this is like. You drink tea, you watch the ceremony. These are the head guides, Pasong, and these are the climbers, us, that are watching this. They bless the food, they bless the Coke, they bless the beer, they bless your climbing equipment. So you bring out your climbing equipment and it's all on the backside. And it's very important. And we can't even climb the mountain for 5 days after this. So that's just part of their culture, the ritual. You can't even climb for 5 days, and that's why you do this right when you show up. So also you have some time. We have 5 days to hang out, and this is just a beautiful video of the Sherpa and the Sherpa people.
It's the head cook.
So Liz recorded that of them singing in their tent, and they would sing and they would dance, and this is where they love to be. They want to be at base camp. They love the high mountains. Our main guide Pasong said it's home. This is home for him. So eventually, you know, it's time to start getting ready to climb, and this is our climbing team. The rest of those folks that hiked in with us to base camp, like Liz and several of the others, they went back down. So Liz stayed 2 nights with us, I believe, and then she headed back out. I stayed 5 more weeks or so. And so here's our climbing team. There's Matthew, who we've talked about, from Moab. There's John from Australia. There's myself and Yandy from Cuba. And then there's the Sherpas. My lead Sherpa is Pasong. There's Donru, and he was the one that was playing the drum. He's not only a Sherpa, he also knows how to do the blessings, which is amazing to me. This is Senge, and this is Pasong number 3. Pasong is a really common name, and so that's Pasong number 3, we called him, and this gentleman didn't go with us. And 8 times Summit Everest, 5 times Everest summiter, 16 time Everest summiter, and I think he's done it 3 times. So these are really skilled people that I was fortunate to have on my trip. All right, so let's start getting into the climb now. So the trek's kind of over. The other folks that were just going to the base camp with us, they head down. Well, let's talk about the nitty-gritty of the climb itself. So we are down here at base camp at 17,500 feet. These are the different camps. There's camp 1, 2, 3, and 4 that you see there. The highest is camp 4 or the South Col. This is also called the South Col. A col means a pass, basically. And we have to work our way up through here. We have to work our way up through the ice fall and up to camp 1 and 2 to do an acclimation run. So we go up to acclimate, and then we keep going if we can. I'll talk about that in a second. The ice fall is incredible. It's very beautiful. It's these big ice seracs, and it's tough. It's really tough. You start off the gate really tough. And not only are these ice seracs or towers going to fall on you, but you're up and down and through. And it took 12 hours to get from base camp to camp 1, because you're weaving through here, you're climbing on these ladders. I thought it was one of the harder parts of the trip, and you're just exhausted to get to camp 1. So we get to camp 1 after making our way through here. This is a good shot of just the scale of it. And this is just a small little portion. And these are the things that you're climbing in and out of. So you get to Camp 1, and Camp 1 is basically just a tent. It's just a tent waiting there for you. It's kind of a layover stop. And the Camp 2 is farther, right here. And we stay at Camp 1 for the night, and then we go to Camp 2. So here's Camp 2. This is early in the season. The longer the season goes, it gets more built up. So we're at Camp 2, and we have a weather window. And we hadn't really acclimated all that much. We'd already been just to Camp 2. Usually you go back down and up, but they're like, hey, we might go. We might make a push for it. It's May 3rd, which is really, really early. The Sherpas are up here at Camp 3. They're up at Camp 4, and the Sherpas fix the line. And fixing the line means attaching the rope that we all follow. And they're up there, and we're like, oh my gosh, we might go. We might just go for it. And I don't know if it's lucky or unfortunate that weather came in, winds came up, and like everyone's got to go down. And so we did not make that weather window. Everyone kind of leaves and goes back to base camp where you can relax and rest. And it's just hard to be up here at Camp 2 for long periods of time. So you go back down and you sit at base camp. And what do you do? What do you do at base camp? You basically sit, you relax, you do some hikes, but there's not a lot to do. You read, you look at the view out your tent, which is not so bad. But this is hard, man. It's tough. It's mentally tough. You want to go, you want to climb, you're getting weak. You start getting weak at 17,500. Your body's kind of breaking down, or you're not getting any stronger, you're not acclimating, and it really affects your mental outlook and attitude. And we stayed here for 10 days, waiting and waiting and waiting for a weather window. Every night when the sun goes down, it's brutal cold, like 0 degrees or -10. You don't have a heater except in the kitchen tents. Your little tent does not have that. You have a really thick, warm sleeping bag that I brought for you to look at later. It's tough, and you just wait and wait and wait. Well, finally, we decided to go. We had the ability to finally go. We had a weather window May 17th, so we made our way back up through the ice fall. We made our way up to Camp 2. We skipped Camp 1. We just went all the way to Camp 2 now. That took us 12 hours to do that. We got to Camp 3, and now we're on the summit push. So we're now starting to go. We know that the best weather window is May 17th, and we have to kind of keep moving. You have to hurry and keep going because you back up when you're going to be there. You know that May 17th is the best day for weather, so we left on the 12th or so. And this is Camp 3. It's on the Lhotse face. It's just cut into the ice, and there's just these levels of tents down below you. There's very little space. You get out of the tent. You don't have much room to work or to even get out and pee or any of that. And there's been people that have slid down right here to their deaths. And so this is Camp 3. We're now on oxygen at Camp 3. So at Camp 3, we're now at oxygen. We're breathing bottled oxygen to help us, starting from here. And then we basically get in line. And this is not my photo. There's a lot of photos from here on out. Most are my photos, but there's many of these photos from Camp 3 on that I did not take because I was so exhausted that it's hard to take photos. But this is a photo of the year before. Ours was not quite this bad, but it was. I was in a line of people, I remember, right next to the next person in line. So this goes up from Camp 3 all the way up to Camp 4. We're on the summit push, and it takes 12 hours of this steep climbing to get to the South Col. All right, 12 hours. We finally get to the South Col. It's a windswept, rocky place that you wouldn't really expect, all these rocks and all that, but it's just windswept, winds blowing through here all the time. And this is at 26,000 feet. 26,000 took us 12 hours to get there. And you still have this to go. So normally what happens, or teams get in, they usually get some dinner and they usually go to sleep for 5 or 6 hours, and then they launch. You don't want to stay here. This is the start of the death zone, they call it, where it just doesn't sustain life, even on oxygen, for long periods of time. And so you want to get out of here. So you usually go that night. Some teams will stay overnight, they sleep, they sit in their tent all day and save energy and then go the next night. There's some risk in that because weather can change or whatever it may be. But I thought we were going to sleep. I'm like, oh, we're going to sleep 5 or 6 hours. I had a bowl of, Sherpas brought me some tea. I had a quick dehydrated dinner, and I was just getting into my sleeping bag, and the Sherpa sticks his head in, and he says, "Big boots, put your big boots on. We're going." And I was like, oh my gosh. You know, I wasn't ready for that. We had no sleep. We had left at 6 in the morning from Camp 3. 12 hours, we had some tea, and now we're going. No sleep. And I don't know, it's really interesting. I was like, okay, I'm going. It wasn't an option. I didn't even think that I'm not going to go. I was exhausted. I was dehydrated. You don't eat much because you got this oxygen mask on. But for some reason, I just didn't have an option. I'm going. I'm going to go. I'm going to do the best I can. And so I didn't think about it much because usually I'm a person, you can ask my wife, I hem and haw and can't make a decision, and I regret all my decisions, and I shoulda, woulda, coulda, right? But it was just innate. It was just like, I'm going. I'm going to go. I didn't even think about it. But I'm like, wow. So you hurry and put on your boots, you hurry and put on your stuff, and you don't want to get left behind. This is it. It's been 6 weeks to get here. 6 weeks, you got one more night, just one more night to make it. But you've already been up 12 hours without any sleep. And now we're going to go all night long. All night long. Here's a great demonstration or a graphic of this. Here's the South Pole. You've got 3,000 more feet to go. So you got 3,000 feet to get up to here. The distance is only about 1.5 miles. It's not that far. 1.5 miles. People can run that in what, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, 7 minutes, right? And think about this on the track out here, Grand County High, right? Think about this. It took us 12 hours to get to the summit. You know what that equates to? 1 lap in 2 hours. I bet all of you could do that, right? So we could walk around here or an hour just to do that. Well, if you think about it, if you spread out the track and put it up at a 45-degree angle and you're at 28,000 feet, you kind of understand how slow it is. It's just an amazing slow process of getting up there, and it took us 12 hours to the top. But I'll back up because things start to get interesting now. And after about 10 hours, all night long, the sunrise comes up. I was just head down, right? I look up at the sunrise, like, oh, okay. That was about it. You think you would stop and just worship the sunrise, but you don't because you're just so exhausted. But I get to about here. This is the South Summit. So this is at 28,500-ish or so. I have 300 feet to go or so, maybe 500. I'm almost there. Well, then something happens. This is what happens. This is what happens. No, I wish it was a whiteout. If you look here really carefully, you can kind of see the mountain, you can kind of see this guy. This is what happened to my left eye. All right, so this is a problem, right? This was really sudden, and I go blind in my left eye. And I'm like, oh man, this is bad. Well, I didn't know what was happening, and my decision was, man, do I tell the Sherpa? Do I tell him? And think about this for a second, because you know what the Sherpa's going to do? You got to go down. You got to go down. And so I debated whether I was going to hide this or not. My right eye was working, my left eye was not. I'm like, oh man. But I did. I said, Song, we got to stop. Something's wrong. I can't see. And I didn't know what it was. I thought maybe it was my contact. I wear contacts. I didn't know if that froze up. I don't know. So I'm sitting here at 28,500 feet trying to change out my contact, which is not easy, right? I bring extras with me, but it had frozen. It froze in the case. I'm trying to warm it up, and my hands are now open because I have to, put saline and all that. And I try out this whole thing, and he just sits there and watches me, and there's climbers going by. And I put in this, and it didn't help. And now I'm like, oh, crap. I don't know what this is. I don't know what it is. I thought it might be like corneal abrasion, because earlier I'd taken my glasses off in the middle of the night, and the wind was blowing, and there was snow and ice crystals, and I thought I was just abraded or something. I don't know. But whatever it is, being on Everest at 28,500 feet, half blind, is not good. Well, what would you do? I'll pose it to you. Would you turn around? Would you keep going? It's a big moral dilemma, right? You're so close. But now I kind of understand a little about summit fever, right? It's a real thing, right? You're so close. It's been 6 weeks of struggling and suffering and working really hard, and this is what you got left. But it's also the hardest part of the climb. It's the Hillary Step, it's the Cornice Ridge, and the summit's way up here, and I have to do that with one eye. Maybe not smart. I don't know. I'm going to pose it to you folks, and you can decide. But again, I didn't feel like I had an option, right? I'm there. I can still walk. I'm still going to go. My Sherpa, if he would have said, let's go, I think I would have had the wherewithal to do that, because if I back up, I did tell him, right? So I think I was willing to accept that, but, he just said, okay, we'll get you there. I'll get you up there, right? He never said, turn around. He said, we'll get you up there. I'll get you up there. I've been up here 16 times. This would be my 17th time. I'm going to get up there. And so I can't see, and when you can't see out of your life, I can't really, my depth perception's all off. I can't really figure out my big boots and where to step, and it was really hard. And I was really nervous about this, but we kept going. Maybe not smart. I don't know, but I continued along this way, and eventually 2 hours, an hour and a half later or so, I made it to the summit. About 10 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you. May 17th, which is Liz's birthday, which I thought would be special, right? I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. It's on my wife's birthday, but she's like, oh, it's the worst birthday ever. I was terrified all night long, and I was worried about your summit push, and I couldn't sleep, and so I'm sorry it was your birthday. But I did make it. But I was terrified. I was half blind, and I was scared to death that my right eye was going to go. I didn't know what it was, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm stuck on top of Everest blind. So I'm smiling here, but really I am terrified, and that's not a great feeling. I don't, I was proud I made it. I looked around. I had a chance to spread my father's ashes from here, which he always wanted to be spread on every continent and the 4 corners of the world. So I spread his ashes here, but I'm terrified. I'm like, oh man. And I'm like, we got to go. We stay 15 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. That's somewhat normal. Most climbers will stay 15, 30 minutes, an hour if the weather's really good. But you got to go. You don't even stay that long after 6 weeks of this. But it's just an amazing experience. But I was terrified because I had to get down this, right? So I had to get back across this, and I can't see out of my left eye at all. Totally blind out of my left eye, basically. And maybe that's a good thing because I didn't see all the bodies, right? There's like 200 or more bodies up there all along here, farther down. And I was so concentrated that I didn't see any of that, but I had to get out of here. And he did a great job getting me down. We just went really slow. I started to try to figure out my feet and all that. And it took about 9 hours or so to get back down to Camp 4. So we came back down Camp 4, and I made it, and I survived. And it had now been 36 hours of climbing. From leaving Camp 3 the day before at 6 in the morning, I'm back down here 6 o'clock in the evening the next day. 36 hours. We had a short little break, and that's what it takes. It's just so arduous that it's hard to even explain to you how difficult that is. So we're here, and I just crash in bed in my sleeping bag, and then things get even worse. You think that was bad. So I have this terrible dream. I have this really bad dream that I was split in half, and half of me was a Sherpa and strong and invincible, and the other half was paralyzed. And I sat up in the tent, and I look over at John. This is about 6 in the morning. And I look over at John, my tent mate, and I said, John, my arm doesn't work. I said, my arm's not working. Something's wrong. And he goes, dude, man, in his Australian accent, he says, I can't understand you. What are you saying? He says, what are you saying? And I said, my arm's not working. I can't feel my arm. Something's wrong. I know what I'm saying. And he's like, I can't understand you. And I'm like, huh, I understand you. And he goes, dude, let me get your oxygen on. Because my oxygen had fallen off in the night, and you sleep with it. And it had fallen off. I'd already done this huge arduous thing. And my oxygen came off in the night, and something was wrong. He put my oxygen on. I'm grateful to him because he put my oxygen on really fast. And within 2 or 3 minutes, my speech came back. My speech came back. I could think, I could talk. We had this conversation, but my arm would not work. And this was not good. I'm at 26,000 feet, and my arm's not working. I can't move it. I can't feel it. If they said close your eyes and point to your hand, I didn't know where it was. It was not good. I couldn't feel it at all. Completely useless. And we talked to the doctor down below at base camp. We make a radio call, and he's like, yeah, probably something happened to you, and you need to get down. Well, that's obvious. I need to get down. There's no rescue that happens. You can't get a helicopter up here. And I'm like, well, again, I have no option. I'm going to get down. I'm going to make it. I wasn't that scared. I knew I was going to get down. It's going to take me a long time. It's going to take me a long time to get down. And again, I've got to now get down from the South Col all the way back down. But our goal for that day was just to get to Camp 2. Just to get to Camp 2. I had to descend 5,000 feet with one arm. So I had to be lowered by Pasong. I rappelled with one arm. I down climbed. And it took about 14 hours to get down to Camp 2. In the meantime, they had been talking to the doctors, and they had been deciding what to do with me. And I didn't know what it was. And I'm like, it's just altitude. Let's just get me down. Get me down. I don't want to rescue. I've been rescuing people my whole life. I don't want to rescue. No, this is silly. Let me just sleep. Let me just think if maybe I slept on it wrong, right? I don't know. But it didn't work, and my arm was not getting better. Now I'm at Camp 2 after 14 hours, and they decided to fly me off. But luckily, I could walk. I could get out of there under my own power. I'm really proud of that. Some people cannot walk off, right? Many of you might have seen this on the news, really famous. This Sherpa's, this is somebody strapped to his back. And he's carrying this guy down. The Sherpa are amazing people, very strong. I am right here, in fact. I'm either in this group or I'm right here. This was May 18th, and they passed me. And so I am very familiar with this, and it really did happen. But I could walk, and it's lucky because if you can't walk, you're pretty much hosed. You're going to be left behind. You can't get a helicopter up there. And I'm just grateful that I could walk out of there. And I'm not paralyzed. I'm not in a wheelchair. Yeah, the eyesight cleared up. That's a great question. I forgot to mention that. Yes, I woke up and had that problem. I couldn't use my arm, but hey, at least I could see now. So I didn't have the double problem. I didn't have this arm and this eye not working. So it cleared up. It just went away. And but I had the problem with my arm. So I get down to Camp 2. They fly me off. Global Rescue, you have to get this insurance. And I paid $1,000 for this insurance that everyone has to have. And you call them up, and a little plug for them. Man, this went clockwork. Boom, 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 boom. And I'm out of there with not a dime. It didn't cost me anything more. It would cost $30,000, $50,000 to get flown out in the States, but I had insurance for $1,000. And then I end up in the hospital. They fly me out, and I end up in the hospital, and I'm still like, no, what is it? No, I'm really healthy. I'm strong. I don't know what it is. It was probably altitude, right? And they're like, no, you need to go get an MRI. And I'm like, where am I going to get an MRI? In Kathmandu, right? But they have great healthcare, actually, great doctors. And within 2 hours, I'm getting an MRI. And I'm like, why do I need to get an MRI? And then the doctor said, well, you lost your eyesight, and this is what it is. Amaurosis fugax. And I didn't even know about this until I started researching it. And it caused vision loss. It's painless. My eye did not hurt at all. Unlike snow blindness, which is like sandpaper in your eye. It lasts for a few minutes. There's research that says it does last for about 24 hours, and that's what it did, and then it kind of went away. Usually self-resolving, and it's from these clots. And here's the kicker, though. Yeah, and I didn't put this together. I didn't even put this together until I was in the States. I met many, many doctors, and no one told me about this. And possible warning sign of an impending stroke. I don't even think Liz knows about this, because I just found it. We're getting ready for this program. So I got my MRI, and I indeed had a stroke. I had a stroke at 8,000 meters that night. 26,000. I do have damage on the left parietal lobe, but lucky it's very small, and I had a full recovery. You can see, I can talk, my arm works great, 100%, and I'm very grateful. Many of the doctors said, man, you are lucky to be alive, and you're probably one of the highest stroke survivors in the world. And I'm really proud that I'm okay. And but I do have, I guess I call that my scar, right? It's an internal scar. So, you know, I'm lucky because this year, 2023, was the highest amount of deaths they've ever had on Everest. There's all different news articles. You guys have heard about them. And I'm glad I'm not the 18th death there. There's all different reasons people died, and don't have time to get into that, but it's risky. It's a risky game, right? It's a gamble. And luckily I made it down. I want to leave you with a few things, a few thoughts and observations and a little history, right? Everest, it's been attracting climbers for a long time. You guys know who these guys are, right? Yeah, Hillary and Tenzing, Norgay, you guys know this. New Zealand beekeeper, John Hunt, Colonel Hunt, and Tenzing, a Sherpa from Nepal, 1953, right, Bago? 1953. Made history. This is a photo of Tenzing. This is not Hillary, which everyone thinks it is. Hillary didn't know, or Tenzing didn't know how to use a camera, apparently. So the only pictures of Tenzing, good for him. I'm really proud of these guys. I'm really proud that it's a Nepali Sherpa that made it to the top first with Hillary. You know, but the point I want to get across to you is, do you know who these guys are? Nope. Good guess. No, you guys don't know who they are. You know why? They didn't summit, but they were the A team. This was the team that went first. Hillary and Tenzing were the B team. This was the first team. This is Tom Bordillon and Charlie Evans. You don't know who they are because they didn't make it. They made it within 300 feet of the top, right? This is them exhausted. They had a different type of oxygen system. No one knows about this because we only think about Hillary and Tenzing because they're the ones that made it. But these guys, I want to give a shout out to. And Hillary and Tenzing were the B team. Sometimes in your life, my life, all of our lives, you might be on the B team, but don't give up because you might make it. And you might be the first team. And that's what happened here. Hillary and Tenzing knew some things from Bordillon and Evans. They used that knowledge, or they wouldn't probably have made it either. Bordillon and Evans started from here, and they went all the way up, and they got right here, and their oxygen tanks broke. And they had a decision too. Do we keep going? And do we make the summit? They would have been the first. And they decided to turn around because they didn't want to die. Basically, they would have died on the return. Their oxygen was out. But that's why you know Hillary and Tenzing, because now they knew 2 days later they make the attempt. Hillary and Tenzing, they're assault team 2. They're the B team. And they knew about this. And so what they did, they talked to Colonel John Hunt. They said, you know, we better go up higher. So they go and camp right here. And they only have 1,400 feet to go. They use the steps of Bordillon and Evans as well. They used the knowledge of the oxygen tanks breaking, so they switched out. So it was a team effort. And a lot of times in your life, it's going to be a team effort on things that you do. And the B team came through in 1953. I also want to talk about mental toughness a little. Getting to the end of what I want to get across to you, but mental toughness, I've been thinking about this so much, about, man, what, I shouldn't have probably made it. It was just grit and toughness and maybe stupidity of going. But if you think about it, I started doing some research about this, and just look at the pictures and what they use for the pictures of mental toughness. It's a lot about climbing and mountaineering, about mental toughness. And I wish I would have trained for this more. It's very hard to train for mental toughness. Most of you in this room are mentally positive. That's different. That's where if you're climbing, you're like, oh, the weather's bad and it's going to delay us. Or you're positive about the food being terrible. Or you're positive about your tent mate snoring, right? Or about whatever it may be. That's mental positivity, and it goes a long way. Mental toughness is a whole different thing. It's when you're so tired, you don't even want to take another step. When you're so dehydrated, you've had a half a quart of water in 12 hours, and you keep going. And mental toughness is when you haven't eaten in a day, and you have to keep going. Or the Sherpa, you're begging the Sherpa. I remember this. I'm like, I'm on the summit night. I've been going 4 hours. And I'm like, please, I need to rest. Can I rest? Can I take a drink? I just need to take a drink. He says, yeah, we'll take a drink. in an hour and a half. And you want to take a drink now, but you can't. You just keep going. There's no option. You just keep going, or you're going to be turned around. So it's tough for me to understand this. I'm still processing this. It's hard to train for. I wish I would have trained for it, because if you don't train for it, then it just becomes suffering and grit, which it can get you through, and it got me through. But I wish I would have. I wish I would have trained for this harder. I'm still processing on how to be mentally tough. I don't know the answer. So a couple other things I want to point out is who I'm grateful for, and all of you in your lives are grateful for people to make your dreams come through. The porters, no one talks about the porters. The porters are carrying all these loads up to camp. They're mostly poor farmers that come up to make some money. They carry ungodly amounts of stuff. It's crazy what they can carry. They're so strong. They're in flip-flops and tennis shoes, and they're carrying this stuff up for us. We're hiking in just a little day pack because, you know why? The porters are carrying my 2 big, huge duffel bags, so I don't have to. So I'm grateful to them. The Sherpas are amazing. They're inhuman. I can't even tell you how strong they are. They're born at altitude. They can handle this. They've been used since the 50s and the 20s, the Mallory and Irvine days. These are high altitude Sherpas. This is my Sherpa Pasong. And they cook for you. They carry your stuff. They set the lines. They fix the lines. They put the ladders in. Mountaineering on Everest would not happen without the Sherpas. And they're amazing, amazing people. Pasong carried 4 oxygen tanks on the day that I went to the summit. I had 1 and like a candy bar, right? And he's got 4 tanks and all this extra stuff and equipment and safety stuff and first aid kits, and didn't even phase them. They're just animals. When I got down to Camp 2 after 14 hours, we did this 36-hour thing. They had some, the Sherpas, not Pasong, but the others with us, they had some dinner. They went right back up to the South Col. They didn't even sleep. It was crazy. They went all the way back to the South Col to get equipment out of there and to bring trash down. So they're amazing people. So I'm grateful to them. I'm grateful to my grandfather. This is back in 1998. I've been climbing for a long time. I was already mountain climbing, and he inspired me to think about my dreams and go to Everest. And he wrote this in a book about Everest. And so 25 years later, I made it, and I'm honored to have him inspire me to go. So thanks to him. And my lovely wife, who went with me to Everest Base Camp to support me. And it was great having her there to support me. It's so arduous all the way even up to base camp. And it's hard to say goodbye, and you're going to be there 5 more weeks, right? And she didn't know what to expect. I could come down paralyzed or dead or not come down at all. So it was great having her there. Thank you for being there. And then lastly, I want to leave you, because people always ask, why do you do it? Why did you spend a lot of money? And why would you go do something so dangerous? It's just a gamble. It's a gamble. If my eyes would have gone out, my right eye, it's a gamble if I'm going to get down or not, right? Who knows who this is? I bet you do. Hillary, or excuse me, it's not Hillary, it's Reinhold Messner. And some of the older folks know him. He was, we really respected him. He was a climber in the 70s and 80s. He's still alive. And he climbed all the 8,000 meter peaks without oxygen. And he's an amazing guy from Tyrol, Italy. And guess what? After my stroke, I couldn't fly. They wouldn't let me fly home. I had to wait 2 weeks in Kathmandu, and that was really hard, right? I just want to get home to my wife and my dog, and I have to stay 2 weeks because stroke protocols, you can't fly. And so I sit there, and guess what? Reinhold is in the same hotel I'm in. And I really worship this guy, man. He was just the premier best mountaineer in the world. And he looks about like this. He's an old guy. He was there for the 70th anniversary of Everest, 1953. 2023. So I went on the 70th anniversary, and that's what he was there for, a celebration. And I'm like, am I going to go talk to him? You know, I'm just some little hack, right? Been up there one time, and I finally get him, and I say, hey, Mr. Messner, I want to thank you. Thanks for all your feats in the 70s and 80s. You were really inspiring. You got me into climbing and mountaineering, and I just climbed it too. And he goes, oh, okay. And I said, thanks for really inspiring me. He goes, I did not do it for you. I did it for the mountains. That's what he said. That's what he said to me. And, you know, at first I said, what an blank, I'm like, he should be, hey man, great job. Yeah, they'll tell me all about it. And he said, I did not do it for you. I did it for the mountains, and I started to think about that. And that was really inspirational, because that's exactly why I do it and why I went, right? A friend of mine a long time ago, I was in college, and my friend gave me this book. Nancy Grumet gave me this, The Love of Mountains is Best. And it's this history about climbing in the 30s and the 40s with Bradford Washburn of Denali and Robert Bates and Charlie Houston and all these guys. It's about just the passion and the love of mountains. Liz knows I'm a mountain guy, right? She's kind of the desert rat, loves Moab, but I'm a mountain guy. And when you just love the mountains, that's why you want to go, or I should say that's why I wanted to go to Everest, because it's the mother of all mountains. And if you're a climber and a mountaineer, you just want to see that. You want to experience the mother and the goddess of all mountains. It's hard for me to explain, but I wanted to try to do that for you to understand why I went. And it was for the love of mountains. And I thank you so much for being here. Everest has such an allure, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much. And man, I nailed it. We're like 1 minute over. So I'm happy to take a few questions, unless Jesse kicks us out. But if there's any questions, I'd love to take just a few. Yes, Michelle.
Do doctors think your stroke was caused by the elements, or is something naturally going to happen?
That's a good question. This whole stroke, I'm going to a neurologist in a week or so. I did see some neurologists in Nepal, but it was too early. I'm going again. I think it's situational. I was dehydrated. I hadn't eaten. I was at altitude. My mask came off. It was probably hypoxia instead of thrombotic. I don't know. I hope I don't have any more strokes, but they never say, you never know if you're going to have another stroke until you have another stroke. But I just don't think that I have a problem, and I'm not going to let it change my life now. Thanks for asking. Other questions? Ah, yes. Angela.
With that giant line of people, somebody was like alpine style, like, or is it no?
Good question. Her question is about alpine style, and there's different styles. Some people don't use the fixed lines. They just climb. They're tied together usually. You don't see much of that, at least on this route. And there's world-class climbers on the ropes. But they stop. They lay down. You have to get around them. You have to unhook from the lines and pass around. Everyone's really helpful. They kind of grab your arm and help you get around. And but it's just crowded. It is crowded. On the Hillary step, it wasn't crazy like that 2019 photo of it packed, but I had to wait 20 or 30 minutes kind of at the Hillary step to get through. And then coming down, more people are coming up, and you have to wait your turn. Good question.
How many people summited?
How many people summited that day? I'm not sure. I think that day was probably 50. It was the start of the weather window, but the weather window was long. So since the weather window was long, there wasn't that pressure to be in that line because people could go later. I understand that about 600 summited this year. Great question. What else? Yes.
Besides your ailments coming down, you were completely healthy. Is it just as hard to climb down as it is up because sometimes I feel that way even when you're hiking around here to a high.
Yeah.
Well, what you go up, you have to come down.
Is it harder coming down is the question.
Just as hard.
It is just as hard. It's really hard on your knees. Your vision is different than when you can see it right here. Now you're looking down, you're exhausted. I think 70 to 80% of deaths and accidents happen on the way down. And you're just so exhausted. And so it is really hard coming down, but you're happy to be moving down. You know, you got to get out of that death zone. What else? Any other questions? Mr. Eric.
How many days prior to your summit day on the 17th for participating? And was that like the first day or was that?
Yeah, that was about the first day. Great question. What day did people start summiting? They didn't fix the Sherpas did not fix it until about the 14th. So no one can go. You can't go before the Sherpas. It's disrespectful. You don't do that. You don't go before the Sherpas. They get to go first. They fix the ropes and then you can go. So it started opening up the day before. So the first ascents were about the 16th. Good question. Thanks. Yes.
Was there a moment when you would say that you got serious about like pulling the trigger to go up the mountain? Like before you even left?
Yeah, there's a question about when did I really focus on going? And that was the year before I went to Denali for the Park Service to do a patrol, a mountaineering patrol for search and rescue. So I went to Denali in Alaska. I'm like, you know, this is great. Yeah, I need to keep in the mountains, stay in the mountains, and but I'm working and I can't take 2 months off. And it was a great time to retire. So retiring allowed me to then climb Denali, or excuse me, Everest. And so it was this 1-2, I retired. A month later, I'm going to Everest. Yes.
Can you point out where the Hillary step is on?
You can't see it here. This is the South Col right here, and it's on the back side, but it's right about there. This is the South Summit, and it's right about there. Yeah, it's around the corner. Yes. Yeah, his question is, how hot was the Western Combe? CWM, it's a Welsh word, and that's from between Camp 1 and Camp 2, and it gets really hot in there. It's like an oven. You wouldn't think so. You're at 22,000 feet, but the sun just bakes you, and they call it the Valley of Silence because the wind doesn't blow in there, and it's hot. You're down to basically your t-shirt when you're walking at 22,000 feet or so. Yeah, it was warm, but then the second that sun goes down, it's freezing cold. Yes, Angela.
Anything that you were not expecting that you were like, oh, I just did not know this was being hard.
I just didn't expect it to be so mentally grueling, and the physicalness of it translate to mental grueling. You just have to keep walking. You don't stop. The Sherpas don't stop. They don't give you breaks. They don't let you drink. It's just, you got this mask on. It's just really mentally tough, and you just got to keep going. There's reasons they do that. They're trying to beat the crowds, trying to beat the weather. They don't want you sitting around in the ice fall where these seracs could fall. So you're just moving and moving and moving. And that was really hard. That was just tough. It's just a different type of experience to just go and go and go and go. Yes.
Did you say that there were 4 climbers, and then did each of you have your own Sherpa that carried your stuff and helped you?
Great question. The question is, how many climbers, and do you each have a Sherpa? Yes, there was 4 climbers, and we had 4 Sherpas. And it's a 1-to-1 ratio from the South Col to the summit. Down low, it's not. You could be just having 1 Sherpa and the 3 are with you or the 4 are with you. But on summit day, you usually have your own Sherpa.
Was that just your expedition or was that's pretty much across all expeditions?
Yeah, that's very common between, the question was, is that just my expedition? It's very common to have your own Sherpa assigned to you to go to the summit. And all the research I did and all the different companies, they all say pretty much 1-to-1 to go to the summit.
What company did you use?
I went with Highland Expeditions. It was a Nepali company. I wanted my money and my resources to stay in Nepal. You can get a Western company, but I just didn't want the money to go to a Western company that's already prosperous. I wanted it to stay in a developing company, which is Nepal, and it's twice as expensive to have a Western guide and a Western company. Is it worth that? No. The Sherpas are great. They know their country. They had secret ins and outs, and I had a great experience with them. Yes.
This company, what kind of vetting do they do to make sure that you can?
Good question. They wanted a 6,000 meter peak. So they wanted a 6,000 meter peak, which is Denali, Aconcagua, or Pumori, or things in the Himalayas. But they wanted a 6,000 meter peak, which I'm grateful for that they wanted that. And all of our climbers had that, if not higher. I had only been to 6,100 or so. Some had been to 7,000. No one had done an 8,000 meter yet, but we all had experience at 6,000. All right. Well, I'm so honored you're here, and I got to share this story of adversity and adventure. I'm happy I can be here with you. It could have gone the other way on that gamble, but I made it, and I'm so honored you're here. And have a great night. And I will be doing this tomorrow. If you have friends or family that want to make it tomorrow, I'll be here doing that tomorrow as well. So, and I want to thank the Grant County Library. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll stick around if you want to ask a few questions while I clean up. Thank you so much. Yeah.
How do you, what mental toughness?